It's no secret that licensed movie video games are a shameless cash grab to use a popular IP to get free advertising and sales for a terrible game. But sometimes that game is actually good. Today we're going through the best movie video games of all time. And I'm not saying these games are perfect by any means, but within the context of being a movie video game, they're amazing. To be eligible for this list, it has to be directly based off of a specific movie, so games that use a movie IP but tell a different story won't be eligible. That means games like the new Spider-Man games, Shadow of Mordor, or even like the Star Wars spin-off games will not be listed here.
Shall not pass!
Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings is the best movie trilogy on Earth, so it was inevitable that some movie tie-in games would follow, and most would argue that the two made by EA are phenomenal. These are two hack and slash games that act very similar to each other. The Two Towers game actually covers most events from the first film and the second, which really wasn't advertised at all, so definitely a nice bonus there. The game limited you to Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli, and even just having those felt like enough replayability for me. Then you also have that bonus level atop Saruman's little tower where you play a little gauntlet mode that was actually pretty difficult. And you also unlocked Isildur after beating the game, which let you play as him throughout the entire game afterwards. And he was actually like the best character in the game, so that was a pretty fun incentive to replay the game as the best player. But back to the whole difficulty thing, I replayed this game very recently, and it was genuinely difficult. Specifically, the Helm's Deep defend the door mission. I swear they like programmed the game incorrectly to give this thing not enough health. Like the decimal was carried to the wrong place or something, because I failed this, I kid you not, like 20 times. Even after putting it on the easiest difficulty, something just was not adding up here. The genuine difficulty outside of this level was pretty standard, and the game takes that more traditional approach of as the game goes on, the game gets much harder, and I definitely enjoy that. Each character earns XP and like ranks up to buy better combos and like abilities, which was pretty cool. And those combos are a big focal point of this game, and you can enter the perfect mode if you do well enough, which lets you one-tap any enemy, which is kind of fun. But let's go ahead and fast forward to the Return of the King game. And you have that same blueprint that had now been upgraded, fleshed out, built upon, and frankly, just better. Nothing against Two Towers, but I think most people would say that the Return of the King game is just better. The same three characters are playable, but now you also have Gandalf, Sam, and Frodo. But the fun doesn't stop there, because there's unlockable characters with Pippin, Merry, and Faramir playable post-game as well. The level design is also completely different, and now that you have levels for each character, Frodo and Sam have their own, Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli have theirs, and then Gandalf has his own. And you can sort of play them in any order you want. There's just like a little progression tree that's pretty simple to follow. The way the game is played is very similar, but now with more characters obviously means way more combos and moves to unlock, which is just more content overall. Also, like Two Towers, this game did not hold your hand. It was genuinely difficult at some parts, mainly that Pelennor Fields mission. I mean, this is another one that's just like you really have to be like near perfect to complete. But one other aspect that sets this game aside from Two Towers is that this game had two-player co-op, but this was a really good addition, and honestly it probably could have worked in the Two Towers game. I just don't think they were thinking of that when they made that game. But being able to defend Minas Tirith with one of your friends at 1 in the morning on a Friday night with a can of Mountain Dew at your side is just something I can't even put into words. Also, if you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan, you know there's a ton of bonus content from these games, like interviews and behind the scenes for not only the movies but also like the way they made the game, which will tickle your Tolkien very well. And you know, obviously this is a pretty delicate game. I mean, I think a lot of people would be mad if they like misrepresented the movie or even like the book, and they don't do that at all. It is very faithful to the movie and even adds like a little more context just to like flesh out some levels, which is really nice.
It was beauty killed the beast.
I don't know what Peter Jackson was on to absolutely cook on the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then to follow that up gave us the best King Kong movie. Oh yeah, and this game also got a really good licensed video game to go with it. Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie, of the book, of the short film on ice, was one of my all-time favorite games for my GameCube. And after replaying it for this video, it holds up very well. I want to start off by giving this game some credit for its beauty.
Hey, Jack, you gave us a fright.
Meow. I feel like a lot of people might look at it now and say it aged poorly, but this game, like the movie, is a cinematic experience. The game is very linear, and honestly, it sometimes might feel like it's on rails, but that sort of ties into that immersion. And one of those immersive elements is the shit your pants horror in this game. Like, that is scary. Oh, there are some minor survival horror undertones with this game that legit gave me nightmares as a kid. They kind of took a page out of the Resident Evil book with not enough ammo, but just enough if you're good, and some other alternatives for killing the dinosaurs. There was also no HUD in this game, so that also added to like the scariness for sure. And with no HUD, the health bar is replaced by a petrifying tribal chant that sounds like the Halo 3 theme, but like from hell.
Dig for dinosaurs?
You okay, Jack?
You know what, Jimmy? I've been better, to be honest.
And I simply could not handle this growing up. And it also didn't help that the scene where Preston gets executed by the natives like really traumatized me as a kid. So when I'm hearing this like satanic tribal moan, like it brought me back to that, and not in a fun way. But aside from its beautiful design and terrifying gameplay, this game is bar for bar with the movie when it comes to how faithful it is. There's some extra levels that weren't in the movie, which honestly isn't a terrible thing. I think it does overstay its welcome in that regard though. There's also a handful of levels where you play as the monkey himself and help you kind of sympathize with the boy who's just trying to get some human nook. I've read that a ton of people think this game has clunky controls, but I didn't really feel that way when I played it. I think the controls actually age pretty well, all things considered, so I don't really understand that argument. I will say there's not much replayability to this game. It's pretty, you know, A to B. There's literally nothing extra to collect in every level. But you do have that alternate ending where Jack and Carl save King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building, which is really cool. I wish there was a deleted scene of this from the actual movie somewhere because I kind of like this ending a little bit more, if I'm being honest. And to top it off, literally every single actor from the movie reprises their role for the voice acting in this game, which I know that was not cheap, but they definitely like made the most of it. Like the voice acting is pretty decent, but also to like use up probably a lot of the budget on that and still make a great game is just like pretty rare. And on a side note, all I'm hearing is Jables every time Carl talks, and I feel like I did not have that when I watched the movie, so that's kind of funny.
I got my leading lady, Jack. Stick with me. I may need you for rewrites.
Dude, turn it to channel 14. In Search of Sasquatch is on.
Kick it to the SpongeBob movie!
The SpongeBob movie is one of the more rare occurrences where an iconic TV show is given an amazing movie. And then that amazing movie got a pretty damn good game to go along with it too. Battle for Bikini Bottom is recognized as the best SpongeBob game and also goes down as one of the best video games based off of a TV show. And that being said, the movie game definitely gets overshadowed by Battle for Bikini Bottom. And if you like Battle, you definitely need to give the movie game a shot as well. Utilizing the same engine and abilities from Battle for Bikini Bottom while adding some new ones and even some like loose upgrade tree like RPG elements as well. The game takes a much more linear approach, but still scatters enough collectibles around each level to incentivize and even sometimes force a replay. I'm not going to act like the gameplay for this game is groundbreaking or really like stands out in any way, but I do think there's good level design and at least some variation with the level types. The paddy wagon and slide levels are some of my favorite, and then there are some bonus levels hidden off the main path that are basically just the Sunshine acapella stages. But back to the gameplay, which again isn't anything crazy, but I firmly believe that this combat system is superior to Battle for Bikini Bottoms. There's a lot more depth with different enemy types, and you actually have to strategize your attacks, whereas Battle was more so spamming of the B button. Those Dia RPG elements also help kind of like sophisticate this experience, each move now getting an added bonus effect or buff that just gives the player way more options. However, like I said, this game is not perfect, and I would go ahead and talk about the bad here, and that's the progression and backtracking required to like further the story. And look, most 3D platformers or like action adventure games require some type of backtracking, and even Battle for Bikini Bottom had a decent amount of backtracking required if you didn't like 100% each level when you played it the first time. But that's also a way more open world experience, whereas the movie game is much more linear, and replaying those levels just to look for a false wall for one extra Goofy Goober token feels very stale. It also wouldn't be a problem if the quotas required to progress the story were tapered down by like 30%. I remember my first playthrough this game when I was like 7 years old. I literally hit a point where I had to go back to like the first level, and I just did not want to do that, so I never beat this game until more recently. But outside of that, this is a game that I think any SpongeBob fan should play, especially if you like Battle for Bikini Bottom. And honestly, I think there's some argument to say this is better. Battle is probably better, but movie game will definitely tickle that itch.
You guys are the best. I never thought I'd make it to retirement, but here I am.
Not really sure if this like deserves to be on this list, but the Lego Star Wars game definitely spawned an entire genre, and technically they do cover like the trilogy, so we're gonna count it here, I guess. While we're here, we'll go ahead and include any other movie video game, like the Indiana Jones ones are pretty decent too. Star Wars video games are a dime a dozen, and honestly like have been around for so long, even more so than today. There's way more than you'd ever think, but very few cover like the actual movies. The only one I can think of is like the Revenge of the Sith game, and then like the NES game, and then the Battlefront games like kind of loosely. I mean, you could maybe put those on this list, but I feel like that's kind of cheap. But anyways, Lego games are universally loved by everyone and also have a ton of replay value with tons of secrets to explore and also like just a bunch of collectibles. Like I said, it kind of feels cheap to include these on this list, but to me it checks the criteria, so I don't want to like dive too much into it. And now with Lego dipping their dicks in literally every single IP to ever exist, it's kind of gotten out of hand. But it all started with Lego Star Wars.
See how fast my pace is? Right in the f***ing head! Yeah! Got a 112, baby.
GoldenEye doesn't really need much of an introduction. It was featured in my most influential video games of all time, and it helped popularize the PvP FPS experience on the console market, which I don't think anyone really saw for a movie tie-in game. Most FPS games at the time, such as Doom and Quake, were designed with PC in mind and supported online multiplayer and were definitely popular amongst the PC community. However, FPS games on console were not much of a thing at the time, let alone any type of PvP experience. Then GoldenEye came along and gave us that console experience with up to 4-player split-screen multiplayer, and that was a smash hit in the late 90s and also was a pioneer for multiplayer games on console to come. And we all know that the multiplayer is where this game shines, but the single-player campaign on its own is also a great experience, staying faithful to the movie and even having some replay value with harder difficulties, straight up adding more objectives to the game. This was a ton of fun even if you weren't a Bond fan and honestly like did not rely on the Bond IP whatsoever to be a decent game. Each mission also had an in-game timer that is tracked at the end of said mission that also spawned a cult following in the speedrunning community, and we obviously know that GoldenEye speedrunning is now a pretty big game for speedrunning because of this. But overall, the importance of GoldenEye lies in its multiplayer, and it is fun, but to me, it has just never been my thing. I think the controls have aged pretty poorly. If you go back and play it now, I mean, you're just gonna get pissed off. That's how it is. And you can totally discredit my opinion. I was like 1 year old when this game came out, so I didn't get to play it for when it was released. I only played it retroactively, and it was fun as a kid, but like going back and playing it now just does not hit. I appreciate it for what it did for gaming as a whole, but I actually enjoyed the single player a lot more. This next one was the entire inspiration for this video. The Warriors is one of my all-time favorite movies, and if you haven't seen it, you will not be disappointed. It's a corny late 70s movie revolving around a dystopian New York City that's overrun by gangs, and also blatant misogyny and homophobia.
One thing we might get out of Cyrus's little get-together is meeting some strange wool. I wouldn't mind laying a little something down on the way back.
You got a one-track brain, you know that?
What's the matter? You going
Anyways, I had seen a ton of praise for this game, and I'm honestly so pissed I never got to experience this game as a kid. I played it for the first time just like last week in preparation for this video, and I was blown away. It's developed by none other than Rockstar, and it's kind of like an action-adventure beat-em-up that constantly reminds you that you're playing a Rockstar game.
Not now, come on, you're being rough.
Oh, I'll show you rough, baby. You ain't seen nothing yet.
The gameplay is what you'd expect from a beat 'em up, with combos, dodging, and counters being the core mechanics of this game. But what I really like about it is that more than half of this game is canon lore that isn't even in the movie, and adds a ton of context about like locations and other gangs and like the characters, and also like even how the Warriors got started in the first place way before the movie, which I really appreciated. The 18 levels are very linear, but have several side objectives if you want to 100% it. And on top of that, there's bonus levels that take place even further before the events of the movie, showing you how the Warriors were formed in the first place. Like I said, you can really tell this game was made by Rockstar, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like only Rockstar can pull off a tutorial level where you give alcohol to homeless people to let you beat the shit out of them.
I promised them some liquor, so they're gonna let you beat up on them for a bit.
And on top of that, you also have those off-color NPC dialogue clips that will always catch you off guard.
See that guy over there? I want you to go mug that sucker.
The level design and entire gameplay loop surprisingly doesn't feel repetitive and keeps you wanting more to finally catch up with the actual events of the movie, which might I add, this is very faithful. They recreate a lot of scenes like frame for frame, but in the game's engine, which I really liked. All the PlayStation 2 GTA games had already been released at this time, and a lot of people argue those as Rockstar's magnum opus. Anyways, the Warriors game wouldn't come out until an entire year after San Andreas, so I think it's super easy to overlook this hidden gem of a game. And another interesting factor of this game was that it was based off of a movie in 1979, but it was a game that was released in 2005. So when you make a game about a movie that's almost 3 decades old, you're not really relying on that IP to carry your sales. So Rockstar really had no choice but to make a good game, and that's exactly what they did. Honestly, I wish we saw more of this in modern day, because the reason why movie video games are so bad is because they're relying on like a current IP that's doing well and advertised all over the place. But when you do it on an older movie that has no buzz or no talk about it in current day, you have to make a good game. And when you make a good game on a beloved movie, I mean, that's just something people are always gonna like. And like I said, I love this movie, but I love this game a lot too. I don't know which one I like more. I really like that the Warriors game adds a ton of context to the movie, which like I think it kind of needed. Like the Warriors movie could definitely get a sequel or some type of reboot, and I think it would do pretty well. And I think this game also showcases the pedigree of Rockstar and just how they're just a really good dev team. Like there was just like no reason for a Warriors game to exist, but then when you give it to someone like Rockstar, they're gonna knock it out of the park, and that's exactly what they did. But those are the best movie video games of all time. If you think there's something that shouldn't be on this list or should be on this list, go ahead and let me know down below. Check out some of my other videos, and if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, and thank you so much for watching.